All right, I tried Loom recording this 4 times. All 4 times something different stupid happened. So forget Loom. I'm moving on to use Screencast-O-Matic. So this will be a different format, but still you'll get it. I'll send it to you by YouTube link. So part 2 of the urinary system. The nephron, remember, is the functional unit of the kidney. The glomerulus is that glom of capillaries which gets filtered by the Bowman's capsule, the first part of the nephron, the Bowman's capsule. That is where filtration takes place. It filters everything out that can come out: amino acids, glucose, ions, sodium, chloride, potassium, water. Not proteins, they're too big. All that stuff comes out. Now, yes, that stuff's good, but it all passes through the capillaries to feed cells. It also passes through here in the Bowman's capsule. That's filtration. Reabsorption starts taking place in the proximal convoluted tubule. Convoluted, very twisted. 65% of all the water and the sodium chloride in the filtrate is reabsorbed back into the blood. See these little capillaries here? Reabsorbed back in the blood right here in the proximal convoluted tubule. So most reabsorption occurs right away at the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule. And then your descending limb of the loop of Henle, you get another 15% of water secreted back into the blood. Okay, so it's not all water you're peeing out. The ascending limb of the loop of Henle is impermeable to water. Yet, through active transport, it puts 25% of the original sodium chloride from the filtrate back in the blood. So 25 and 65, that's like 90% of the original sodium chloride filtered out back in the blood, because your body pretty much knows where it wants to keep the sodium and chlorine levels in the blood. And then, remember, it loops around between the afferent and efferent arterioles here, comes to the distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubules and collecting duct also secrete water back in the blood under direction of the anti-diuretic hormone from the posterior pituitary gland. Posterior pituitary gland produces ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. That means it does the opposite of a diuretic. It puts water back in the blood, concentrating the urine, so by the time it comes down the collecting duct into the renal calyces, only 1% of the original water from the glomerulus is used as a diluent to carry your waste products out. Okay, 2 types of nephrons. There is the cortical nephron, the shorter ones, which reside mainly in the cortex of the kidney. There's the juxtamedullary nephrons, and they are juxta in position to the medulla, medullary. They see that loop of Henle dips deep in the medulla. So those are 2 types of nephrons. All right, micturition is the act of releasing your external urinary sphincter in order to urinate. Usually second semester, the whole semester, I have y'all sing MICTURITION, gotta go right now, gotta go real bad. Forever let us hold our sphincters tight, real tight. MIC, see you real soon. TUR, are you going yet? ITION. Gotta have the sigh at the end. Anyway, I have you sing that just to go out, whether it's to go to the restroom, blow your nose, whatever. It's just, you learn it. 15 years ago when I started that, it's because in class, I couldn't believe how many people missed that on the fill in the blank question test. I said, it's not that hard, it's MIC, and it clicked from there. So stuff we do in class to practice. Filtration, to reiterate, I already mentioned this, but filtration takes place in Bowman's capsule, the renal corpuscles where filtration takes place, filters the blood out. Most reabsorption at the proximal convoluted tubule. Descending loop of Henle, 15% of water back in blood. Ascending loop of Henle, 25, not 15, but 25% of the original sodium chloride back in blood. So most of the water and sodium chloride is back in the blood by this point. All right, some practice for you. The inferior vena cava, descending aortas, the kidneys, cortex, medulla, the renal pelvis, the renal veins and arteries, the ureters, urethra down below, urinary bladder and wall, ureters, and finally, that gland sitting on top of the kidneys, added to kidneys, is adrenal gland. Practice on your own now. Pause it. You can do that. All right, sagittal section of the kidney. This outer lighter colored region is called the cortex. The one triangle they call a renal pyramid. This big open area in the middle, which usually has some fat into it too, collects the urine. It's called a renal pelvis, which dumps urine into the ureter, which takes it to the urinary bladder. These little indents up here are called renal calyces. One is a renal calyx. And the middle area is called the medulla. Not the medulla oblongata. No, the medulla of the kidney. All right, so again, the whole urinary system, big picture. Blood from the heart, or blood to the heart, sorry. Inferior vena cava brings blood back up to the heart. The indentation of that point of entry where the renal veins and arteries enter the kidney is called the hilum. Then you got your ureters carrying urine to the bladder. You got your urinary bladder. You got blood from the heart. Blood comes out of the heart straight down the inferior vena cava. I'm sorry, the descending aorta. And one of the first places it drops off is the kidneys because they cleanse the blood. You got the adrenal gland on top of the kidney. You got your renal vein and renal artery bringing blood into and out of the kidneys. Notice the kidneys have the descending aorta bringing blood right in to get washed. Renal vein takes it right back to the inferior vena cava to get put back in the system again. So the washing system, the kidneys, right off the bat, very important. Ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra takes urine out. Internal urinary sphincter is only used in males during ejaculation. It closes the bladder neck so that the ejaculate goes out the long urethra rather than up the short trip to the bladder, which is called retrograde ejaculation. So here's the testes. The vas deferens carries that sperm up and around the urinary bladder and down. Here's the prostate gland. It meets up. Prostate gland, Cowper's gland, puts all this stuff together, pushes a short route. It go pretty much virtually 100% of the stuff would go right into the bladder if that internal urinary sphincter was not functioning. The internal urinary sphincter closes, forcing it all to come out the long path all through the urethra. By the way, men have less UTIs, urinary tract infections, than do females because females have a very short urethra. Men have a longer one due to they have a penis. Here's the side view, a sagittal section. It's just beautiful because it shows you the internal urinary sphincters right here. And here's the testes forming the sperm. The vas deferens carries it up around the bladder. Here it meets up. And there's the prostate gland. Short route right up into the bladder. But the internal urinary sphincter, internal urethral sphincter, it says here, closes, forcing it down and out long urethra. Here is the external urinary sphincter. Notice the external urinary sphincter is very close to the prostate gland. Men who have prostate problems, most men do by the time they get their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, if they have surgery on that, that usually disrupts the external urinary sphincter. It's a muscle. It makes it very difficult for them to hold their urine. So if your father, grandfather, whatever has had prostate surgery, most likely they're wearing Depends unless they really, 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 really exercise that external urethral sphincter well by Kegel exercise. Hold it in, pull it back in, and they had a good surgeon who took just prostate gland. Here is a frontal section minus the prostate gland to show you very simply internal urethral sphincter right there. During ejaculation, closes that so the ejaculate goes out the urethra. Here's the external urethral sphincter right there. That's what we use to hold the urine in, to voluntarily hold our urine. Otherwise, you'd pee yourself. Again, the internal sphincter keeps the bladder from going up or the semen from going up the bladder so we can actually reproduce. All right. What tells you you've got to go to the bathroom? The bladder, obviously, when it gets full, very stretched out, has stretch receptors, nerves in there which says, we're full, I gotta pee now. So you got stretch receptors. Second one is chemoreceptors. They detect chemicals. Yes, caffeine, uric acid, urea, anything toxic, anything thick concentration of ions stuff in there. It's like, I got to go. So if you've ever had to go to the bathroom real bad and you go and it's not a whole lot, but it's very concentrated, your chemoreceptors told you, get rid of this stuff. It's nasty. All right. Diuretics are things which cause you to pee a lot, or more appropriately, cause a decrease in reabsorption of water in the nephron back to the bloodstream. So caffeine and alcohol both work on different parts of the nephron, on the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, telling them not to put as much water back in the blood. Therefore, you pee a lot, you urinate a lot, and you become dehydrated. Antidiuretics do the opposite. Antidiuretic hormone produced by the pituitary gland, posterior pituitary gland of the brain, tells your body, put water back in the blood so you don't dehydrate as much. So if you're out a long hike and you don't have much water and you're sweating a lot, ADH levels are going to be high. ADH, antidiuretic hormone, they're going to be high, telling you put as much water as you can back in. So when you do get to the end of your hike and you go to the bathroom, it's going to be very concentrated. It's going to be dark yellow. Love this diagram. It shows on the side cortex, medulla. The medulla is very concentrated. The deeper you go, the more ions. It helps maintain homeostasis of the ions. So the nephron dips down there. Remember, Bowman's capsule, filtration. Proximal convoluted tubule, most reabsorption, 65% of water, 65% of sodium chloride back in the blood. Descending limb of Henle, of loop of Henle, 15% of water put back in the blood. So right now, the bottom of this, you've got 80% of the original water taken out in the filtrate, put back in the blood because you need water in your blood pressure. Ascending limb of the loop of Henle is impermeable to water, yet by active transport, 25% of sodium chloride put back in blood. So it's 90% of your sodium chloride from the filtrate put back in the blood. You need that. Distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct put 19% of the water back in. That equals 99% of the original filtrate of water put back in the blood. Only 1% water remains as a diluent. That is to transport the waste out of the body. We're not desert rats where we pee this thick sludge. We use a lot more water to dilute our urine, so it comes out as pee-pee, watery. What are the three main products in urine? Three main waste products? Look at the diagram. Really, two main things you need to look at. The plasma levels, milligrams per 100 mils, and the urine levels. If you look down here, proteins, not found in urine. Glucose, not found in urine. Should not be found. If you have protein in your urine, it's called glomerulonephritis, infection of the kidneys. The glomerulus and the nephron. Glucose, that's diabetes mellitus. That should not be in there. Urea, yeah, a ton of it compared to what's in the blood. Uric acid, a lot. Creatinine, 1.1, the smallest thing out there in the blood plasma, yet one of the highest things in the urine. Therefore, creatinine is an excellent marker, blood marker for kidney function. So they test your creatinine levels to find out, are your kidneys working properly? Creatinine is not to be confused with creatine, okay? Totally different stuff. So therefore, yes, the big main waste products from like protein metabolism, etc., ammonia gets broken down to urea, is the urea, uric acid, and creatinine. Those are three biggies. Boom. So, blood pressure. Remember we talked back in the heart that right atrium realizes, oh, too much water in the blood, too much pressure in here. It shoots off ANH, atrial from the atrium, natriuretic hormone. Natri means natrium, or Na sodium, what it used to be called. And then hormone. Sends it to the kidneys, tells kidneys, get rid of sodium, because where sodium goes, water flows, baby. Water follows sodium. So you get rid of water, blood pressure drops back down to where it should, hopefully. On the converse, this little area called the juxtaglomerular apparatus, remember, the Bowman's capsule is the first part, filtration. Proximal tubule, reabsorption. Descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle. The ascending loop of Henle comes back